Helga Cassandra Davis.
Ooh, Daniel Alexander Jones. It's so crazy to me. On March 8th, I was in LA. I was in LA with Toshi. We performed The Parable of the Sower at Royce Hall for 1,800 people. There were murmurings, there was noise, but it was little like this about this thing that was happening, people getting sick. But we were in LA. We didn't know whether or not anyone was going to show up to the show. Like the UCLA was very clear that if people did not want to come out, if they felt uncomfortable, they could get their money back for their tickets. And so when they called us to the stage, we had no idea whether or not there were going to actually be people in the hall. And of course, we walked out on stage and there were 1,800 asses and 1,800 seats. And we did that show, and it felt to me like such a profound way to go out. That's what everybody felt like. Like we were about to enter something that none of us knew anything about, and that wherever that thing was going to take us, we were glad that we were in that space making that work before we had to go. I cannot tell you how many times over and over and over again in my head, I am so happy to know that you were also in that audience, because I knew that I was going to come home and that you wouldn't be here.
You know, you're my space twin.
And so I was angry, I was scared, I was sad. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I went to the thing where I was highly functional.
Right. Because that's the response, right? Like for us, for you and me especially, is we're gonna get in that mode of handling our business, handling what needs to be done, right? But that holy place, that point of departure, that threshold you described in that room was so incredibly palpable. And I feel like that there's that inner seed in us. And I would argue it's in everybody, but I think that is a place that's numbed or cut off for many people by virtue of the culture we live in, the society we live in. But there's a sense of knowing when something is coming, a portent, a sense of imminence. And you and I have been talking for years. We've known something was going to come. But you know what flashed back for me was September 11th. And you'll remember, you know, I was downtown and we were doing a panel for TCG, actually, when they used to have,
right.
Remember? So I was on that panel with all those folks when it all happened, and I remember it was that morning. And I remember Amelia Cachapero, who is one of my art heroes, you know, she said, what we can do, we don't know what's transpiring, right? But what we can do is we can serve artists at this moment. So we kept going, and all through the day, we kept getting notices. And by the end of that day, you couldn't reach anybody on the phone. You couldn't, you know, the subways had been shut down and everything or whatever. And all I knew was to come to you. And so I walked to your apartment. And I remember the feeling as I walked to you that I knew I was going where I needed to be, my space. But I also knew I was walking through the remnants of a world that had been one way that morning and was now forever changed. So I think that thing, there's a muscle about that, muscle memory about that, that's been very present right now. Thinking about what you're talking about, everybody knowing we're going into something we don't know what it's going to look like. And so I'm keenly aware of that.
I got back here on the 12th of March. I got back late, and so I just went to bed. On the 13th, I was like, hey, I'm back. Where is everybody? And I went out to dinner. We were making this joke about the L'ultima cena, the Last Supper.
I.
And it seemed funny that night. Because in a week or two, we were going to see each other just as we had before. Mm-hmm. And then on the 14th, I had messages from everywhere saying, are you prepared? You're going to be locked in your apartment for 2 weeks. Go to the grocery store, get your supplies. And then I just kind of shut down because I am here alone. I felt like I'm here alone. In the midst of that, I remembered this text that I had been sent in another moment that was highly chaotic and uncertain. Okay. And it just kept coming back to me. I want to read it to you.
Please.
It's actually Kafka's 109th and final aphorism, because that's what you need in the middle of a pandemic. Okay. You do not need to leave your room. Remain sitting at your table and listen. Do not even listen. Simply wait. Be quiet, still, and solitary. The world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet.
You know, we were talking a while ago about Butch. And, you know, for those who don't know, Butch Morris, who was an extraordinary musician, artist, and he founded this mode of making called conduction, which was an improvisatory musical process. And so people would, you know, he would gather together musicians, poets, movers, everybody, right? And you've done many of them with him. But the idea being that people would improvise, and he would listen to the improvisation as it unfolded and catch pieces, and then, if you will, teach pieces or get the players to listen with such an ear that they could know that they were supposed to listen so acutely that if he indicated something that should be held.
Or repeated, like this was the sign for repeat.
Right, so you would repeat it, and he would then build a composition like a conductor from their improvisations, but he was also improvising. And so there's a level of listening that he walked with in the world. What I feel like is that kind of listening is akin to what Kafka's piece is inviting us to sit down and to be still in the midst of the tumult, to be where you are, to be local, to be in the place, and to be with yourself in such a way that you are actually listening to an environment that, in this case, is in the midst of a slow-moving disaster. And what I've been trying to challenge in myself and all of my loved ones is to wait, because it's still unfolding. And I know we have to do our things. I'm paying particular attention to the people who have to continue to enter the fray of like very, very pointed danger in order to, you know, make their living and to continue doing this essential work, and et cetera. But we don't know, you can't get your bearings in the middle of the hurricane. You have to listen.
It's interesting that you talk about Butch too, because when he spoke with us about conduction, he said that you must always think of yourself as a composer, so that, you know, there's a kind of agency in that as well, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just that you take what you know and you make a moment. It's that you take what you know and you construct a moment. And that's not about control. that is, it's really doing two things at the same time. It's playing and it's listening.
And so that to me is that thing of like, what is the last line? You know, like
it will roll in ecstasy at your feet.
Roll in ecstasy at your feet. And so this thing of ecstasy and the ecstatic, you know, so I'm working on this new project, and one of the topics in it is the ecstatic, right? And thinking about what it means. Ecstatic tends to be about like, oh, I'm in a joyful, exultant place, versus in a place where you have transcendence of your sight, of your ability to hear, that you're seeing through veils. You're actually in a state where your consciousness is so altered that you're actually seeing across and outside time. And I think about that, the world rolling in ecstasy, in that kind of ecstatic space at your feet. Things are revealed. And things are revealed that you don't normally see because you are too close, or you're in too much of the lockstep rhythm of the kind of mechanized time signature that we're all often, you know, especially those of us in bigger cities. And I think even in terms of being an artist, right? And this is something I love about you, my space twin, and I love about what you're doing and all of your work in your life. You always say, and I'm gonna do you, not so much and not so fast, right? Like, how do we actually not be in the flow that is given, but rather step back or step forward, but step. That's the composition part, right? Like, I'm gonna choose to position myself in a way in order to hear what's on the other aspect of the bandwidth, on the other aspect of the spectrum than what I'm locked into. So it's a time of deep listening, along with the kind of everyday composition that we must do, but the kind of listening that, you know, I think that's, again, it's something that I rely on you. That's why I need you in my life, because you're the listener on, I mean, there's 900 reasons, but how you listen to a thing is always multidimensional. And therefore it challenges what's easy.
I could give a million reasons for not wanting to listen to or feel deeply because it hurts so much.
So much.
And my first trip into the Whole Foods and seeing people walking around with these devices, and I was like, what are they doing? And they were shopping for other people. And that the horns of privilege are still rearing their heads, even in a time like this, or maybe especially in a time like this.
The thing about this particular crisis is that it knows no border.
But doesn't it, Daniel? We're the ones who are dying more than it's affecting black and brown people more than anybody else, and poor people who don't have, who, like in Detroit, Shara was telling me about a bunch of her neighbors whose water has been turned off, so they can't wash their hands. But aren't we gonna pay? Isn't this?
Yes, and I do not mean to in any way indicate that it is not affecting more some than others. But what I'm saying is there is ultimately nowhere to hide. Ultimately, there's nowhere to hide, because you cannot maintain your system of privilege if everything that maintains that system of privilege is destroyed. Can't do it.
And I feel like that's where I count on you as my space twin. Mm-hmm. There are times when I get caught only in one world. And so I think that's why when I read this Kafka, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it wouldn't go away. And so I had to go get it.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I read it to you, you could help me understand why it was important to also be there.
This pandemic is one thread of a cord of changes that are coming because of climate change, because of this, the untenable nature of this system, right? That we're in. And there are people who got that message, you know what I mean? And I think the relationship between that and racial justice, the relationship between that and a kind of equity of thinking of resource and community, right? And I guess this is what I'm saying about Parable, that they were behind that locked gate. And then somebody got the key.
Right.
And then it's done. It is
okay.
better now to begin to, you know, practice. What's Happy say? Throw it away.
Keep your hands wide open and let the sun shine through, because you can never lose a thing if it belongs to you.
Right. And what belongs to me is you. What belongs to me is the human connection. And what belongs to me as an artist, and I'm thinking about a theater artist, you know, who knows when American theater is going to be like, you know, and I think this is really a big deal. But what is not going to change, we may not be gathering in buildings. But I said, everybody who is a stage manager is an organizer.
That's
Everybody
right.
who is a director is a systems thinker. Everybody who is an actor is a communicator, a great communicator. And all those things are necessary if we can let go of the form that they have taken historically and habitually for us and repurpose them. Not to say we're never going to gather again, we're never going to tell stories or shine a light or, you know, whatever we're going to do. The way we do.
I feel like we've said our things. And the only other thing for me to say is that I love you and I miss you.
I love you and I miss you too, but I'm glad we get to talk.
Yep.
On these internets.